Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I proudly stand today to carry this on behalf of a member from the other body who has provided great leadership on this issue. And I remind members that this particular issue was brought forward at the Energy Council this year in mid-March because it is so important. And I listened to members from around the country say this really can't be true. Is this really true in your state? And the answer to that is yes. And so what is really true? And I'll cover that with you very briefly, Mr. President. And I'll say from my perspective, this is a tragedy and a double standard that's applied to the environmental impacts upon the state. And it's gone on for a long time. So essentially we're talking about federal exploratory wells for oil and gas that were drilled between 1944 and 1981, 137 of them. Only 7 of those, Mr. President, have been sealed to state law's standards. Only 7, which means there's well over 100 that remain open and unabated for all the pollution that might go on in that process. And to be quite frank, the standard that the Department of Interior and BLM have applied in their approach to this is, well, we will do 1 a year. Well, no offense, Mr. President, but you'll be long and gone and have a lot of time to spare before these wells will be addressed. There are 43 of these wells that are flagrantly outside any standard by any stretch of the imagination. There are 3 that can't even be found in the northern tier, in the Arctic, the area that is, quote, so prone to pollution and is so fragile. A little place called Anwar has a different standard when it comes to something like this. Some are filled with diesel fluid. One's leaking natural gas. And you know, quite frankly, one of the producers on the North Slope has on its own accord, its own initiative, addressed one of the wells on the North Slope because it was in the proximity of where they were doing some work and they were trying to be responsible. These open wells pose a significant environmental risk to the land, to the sea mammals, to the groundwater, to the vegetation, the birds and the fish, much like we hear about Anwar. If private petroleum companies approached a problem like this, or with the same irresponsibility, they would be fined billions of dollars and be vilified by environmental groups and the news media. And in that respect, some of these wells have been characterized as industry sites by organized anti-oil, anti-development kinds of people. And quite frankly, they generate big bucks off showing pictures of these wells that BLM, Department of Interior, are responsible for. As I said, BLM is only plugging 1 per year, and BLM is claiming priority on this issue. Now, I will remind you, Mr. President, that over the years, there's been approximately $9 billion that's been collected by the federal government in NPRA and Alaska OCS, Outer Continental Shelf, for lease sales. That would go a long way if some of that money could be applied to the problem we have in pollution of our northern tier. There is some hope. The first of the hope came out of the fact that this is getting visibility by a member from the other body taking the leadership on this issue. But there's also additional hope, and the last name is Murkowski, that has taken the lead on this, supported by others, to make something happen. So, Mr. President, I would say to you, I hope that before you and I depart this mother Alaska to another land, that we can get a major initiative on the way to make sure this issue is addressed. This 100+ wells are sealed. Those that are filled with fuel oil are addressed. And lo and behold, my grandkids and your grandkids, if they want to go have a picnic on the North Slope, they won't see any of these wells. Thank you, Mr. President.